Good morning, students. We find ourselves in 1 Samuel 19 today, and we're going to quickly just go over the story of what happens in this one. This is a pretty interesting story. There's a lot of things that are going on, so hopefully I do it justice. Um, but it is an interesting one. So we start off with David has been found displeasurable towards Saul. In the last chapter, Saul tried to kill him while he was playing his lyre, and David had to flee. David came back, was eventually married to Saul's daughter, Michal, um, and David seems to continue on in his military victories. He is still successful, and Saul has tried to kill him a couple different ways now. So now we move on to the next chapter, which is Jonathan and David are still in an excellent relationship with each other. Saul is very jealous of David, and Saul has decided that he will tell the people around him that his plan is to kill David. Jonathan, hearing this, immediately goes to warn David and says, "Listen, my father's out to get you. You should be careful right now. I'm going to have a conversation with him, and hopefully it goes well." So they eventually have that conversation. Jonathan and Saul go out to a field, and they're talking with each other. And Jonathan convinces Saul to not kill David for his sister's benefit, but also for his own benefit, and because David has done very good things for Saul. He has made Israel more successful. He has protected Israel. He has put his life and limb on the line for them, and there's not a really good reason as to why he should die. So Saul, impulsive Saul, says, "I promise David will never be harmed. I will not take his life." This is obviously going to change very quickly. David, after hearing that he is being no longer chased after, he increases his ranking. He becomes even more important in Israel. And every single time he goes out to battle, the Philistines and anyone that's against him is fearful of him, and they lose. David is an extremely capable warrior. He is very wise, and he leads his men ferociously. This continues on, and David becomes more and more popular with the people. So not just with Goliath now, because the Goliath thing could have been like a one-time instance. Oh, lucky he survived. But David has been showing across the time that he's been with Israel and the time that he's been within the army that he's extremely capable, and he may be an excellent fit for potentially, the next commander, or possibly even the next king. And that's sort of where we find ourselves. Now, all of this feeds into the jealousy that Saul has. He also has an evil spirit that's descended upon him, that's been allowed by God, and every so often this evil spirit causes him to act very quickly. So David still works within his palace and still plays his lyre, which is kind of like a harp, occasionally for Saul when he's in a bad mood. This time, though, again, Saul grabs onto a spear or javelin and attempts to pierce David through it. David is able to avoid it and sort of takes that cue as his opportunity to leave. So he flees. He flees to his house. It's a really nice drawing of his house, and to his wife, Michal. While in his house, they're trying to devise a plan, and David says, "Listen, I have to get out of here. It's getting a little too hot for me. I need to leave." And Michal says, "Well, I will cover for you." So she devises a plan. Saul sends soldiers to their house, and Michal says he can't come right now. He's actually sick in bed. And when the soldiers eventually do get into the room, they find that it is not actually David in the bed, but it is in fact a bunch of goat hair at the pillow, or where the head would be, and some idols. I've drawn in these beautiful little drawings of idols. I'm not sure exactly what they would look like, but hopefully the imagery is good enough. We're going to go back to this idea because it's going to be important later on. The soldiers, realizing that they've been duped, go back to Saul and tell him, and Saul immediately starts to try to track down exactly where would he find David now. So David actually chooses to flee with his friend from before, Samuel. Samuel is an older gentleman now. He has been around for a long time. He's been through a lot, and he's had many interactions with Saul in the past. And he sort of understands that this is a big issue and this is something that's pretty significant. So the two of them flee. They flee to Ramah. And at Ramah... they first meet in Ramah, and then they go to Naioth. Now, I drew a picture of of a church, but that's not exactly what they would have had in those days. But what happens is Samuel, along with David, go and flee to other prophets, and they spend time together. This would be probably beneficial to David, where he would be getting advice from someone who has been around the block for a while, that's Samuel, and would also have an opportunity to possibly look into the passages or speaking with wise people. So this is overall a benefit to David's ability to lead. Unfortunately, he has to flee here. Saul quickly hears about what's happened, and he sends soldiers to go and kill David. Now, what's interesting about this is every single time the soldiers show up, they end up falling down and prophesying along with the prophets and Samuel. So he actually sends three different groups of people. He sends the first group goes there, and they meet a group of prophets with Samuel standing there, and by the Holy Spirit, Saul's men also join in the prophesying. And then when he's told about that, he sends more men, and those guys also start joining. And the last time, Saul sent men a third time, and they also prophesied, so he did this three full times. And by the fourth time, he's like, yeah, I'm done with this. I'm going to go find Samuel and David and deal with this myself. When he gets there, Saul has all these bad intentions, but God immediately turns that to the benefit of the others, where he also joins in the prophesying. And then this is what's sort of odd about this. He strips naked, and he prophesies in Samuel's presence, and he laid naked for all day and all night. And that becomes a bit of a mocking point for the people. Your king, with the intentions of killing someone, ends up falling on the ground, disrobing and prophesying. It's a very odd circumstance, and we want to sort of dive into, well, why is all this happening? What's the purpose of it? So first we want to understand that through all this, we can see that Saul's losing control. He's losing control of his family. Jonathan disagrees with him and fights on his brother or on David's behalf. Michal won't betray her husband, and an evil spirit continues to infest his mind. Saul is becoming less and less reliable, and he's becoming more and more unhinged. David, on the other side, is kind of having the opposite happen to him. So as Saul decreases, David increases. David has a friendship in Jonathan that is unbelievably reliable. He's warned. Michal is willing to stand up to her father and possibly face his wrath by helping him escape. And David also has the support of the Samuel and the prophets who won't allow him to be captured. Now, to get a bigger sense of what's happening here, Saul's kingdom is failing. He has evil spirits. David is a military expert, which is far superior than Saul. Saul is being ridiculed for his actions, and the issue of idolatry is still very, very present within Israel. If we just understand what Michal did, the fact that she had an idol just accessible in her house to be able to have it fake out as David, gives us a picture of what it looks like in Israel right now. And God's setting up the scene for more things to happen. But right now we're just seeing a really strong decline of Saul and an increase in popularity and hopefully of wisdom in David. And we're going to leave it off here for now. I hope this was helpful, and I hope you enjoyed my pictures, and have a great